Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Thursday, November 13th, 2025, and today we are going to be talking about a brand new data point out of the state of Arizona in the 1st Congressional District, showing the Democratic potential candidate here against the Republican in an open seat set to take place in November of 2026, the Democrat leading by 8 points across the district. This is a Donald Trump +3 congressional district from the last election, and in a battleground state, in a battleground district, likely seen to be as one of the primary opportunities for Democrats in the 2026 midterms as a potential pickup opportunity to win back control of the United States House of Representatives. Now, the most recent data point comes from a Democratic pollster. I want to start off the bat by acknowledging that this probably has some type of Democratic tilt, but in the facts as they are, the Democrat leads by 8 points, which no amount of skewing of the data and messing with the electorate can find you at a point where you are leading by such a significant amount if this campaign really has any sense to it. And it makes sense, right? This is a pollster here, sure, of course, aligned to the Democratic Party, as most internal polls often are this early out, but it also stands to be well within reason that Democrats would be leading in this district in specific, and it also might ring a bell. If you've been watching my videos for quite some time over the past few months, you might remember that Arizona's governor race has come into conversation in more times than just my, monthly predictions. Arizona's governor's race has seen quite an interesting lineup of Republicans who have chosen to run in this race, including David Schweikert, who is currently Arizona's 1st congressional district representative back in that seat that now stands to be an open race. The Democrats are closely eyeing up to potentially win in 2026. Now, Schweikert has served in Congress for a very, very long time. When you take a look at his electoral history, he has had quite an impressive means of getting into power in many of these races. He got first elected into Congress in 2010, served since then, defeating a Democratic incumbent in the red wave that was the Tea Party movement, in a massive, massive swing towards the Republicans. And since then, he has really been dominating. Even in 2018, won his race by roughly 11 points. And then in 2020, it narrowed up, got drawn into a more competitive district, ended up surviving in 22 and winning in 24 as well. But what we know is that unlike, what we have seen in the past, Schweikert in 2024 ended up underperforming relative to the statewide average. In 2020, he won his district by 5 points as Joe Biden won the state by 0.2%. In 2016, he won his race by 25 points in the same year that Donald Trump won the state by 3.5%. In 2012, he had a race where he won by nearly 30 points in a state that Mitt Romney won by single digits every single election, where he has coincided with the top of the ticket. He has outperformed that margin by a significant amount until 2024, when his district became bluer than the rest of the state. Is this ringing a bell? If you've watched my videos, now he's deciding to run statewide because Arizona stands to be potentially a better opportunity for Republicans statewide rather than in a district that he has represented for over a decade. And that's because the trend lines here aren't great for the GOP, and this data point exposes it further. The Democrats leading here in itself is already a news story, but the degree at which they are winning by is quite important. And what we know is that Donald Trump is underwater in Arizona's 1st district, largely in line with what we're seeing on the national average, but it explains to a degree why the Democrats have such an advantage. But here's what we're also seeing too, that in terms of this district in specific, when it comes down to asking questions about, who do you back, Democrat or Republican, the Democrats take the advantage of the list of candidates here by roughly 8 points. And just thinking about, what we've seen across this district in specific, this is one of the primary pickup opportunities because not only was it close on the presidential, it was as close as it was on the congressional level as well, and stands right in that midpoint of districts that Democrats would practically count upon to flip in 2026. And even if you just were to shift the map, for instance, 5 points to the left relative to the last cycle, this district swings towards the Democrats. Arizona's 1st is one of the first in the nation to actually jump over to the Democratic Party, given how narrow it was in the last cycle. And it helps me remember, what it means when vulnerable incumbents decide to leave their districts. Now, Zach Nunn is not a great example because Donald Trump was able to call him up and keep him running for Congress, but he represents a very similar district in terms of partisan breakdown. In fact, it was one of those that just switched over to the Democratic Party. The margin here in 2024, it's kind of uncanny, went to Schweikert by 3.8% and also to Zach Nunn by 3.8%. Like Arizona, his congressional district swung to the left relative to the nation and was bluer than the rest of the state by far. And so Zach Nunn intended that rather than run in what seemed to be a doomed district, instead run for governor across the state. And I think these data points kind of explain why Schweikert was so quick to get out of the race, though Donald Trump pushed Zach Nunn back in. For the rest of it, it's quite obvious why Schweikert wanted to get in and out of it, especially given that Arizona is a state with a very high Latino population. That, as we've seen over recent times, you're going to find, I guess we have the ad blocker on. Let's just go ahead and try to remove this really quickly. But, getting back to it too, seeing exactly, what happened here. 1 in 5 Texas Latinos who voted for Trump in the last election regret their vote in a state that has enormously been very good for the Republican Party in recent years. And looking at what we see, and what members of Congress who represent predominantly, Latino districts are telling the Republican Party, this is a wake-up call. There really is no other way to look around it. On one end, you have Republicans collapsing in support amongst Latino voters. On the other end, Donald Trump is collapsing amongst every other type of group. It is the perfect storm as to why Arizona would be so lopsided in favor of the Democratic Party right now, and certainly a very grim sign for the GOP of what is yet to come across the board. And this district in specific is a great example of things like that happening. Arizona is a state that is going to find itself at a crossroads point. It's not just simply about, who do you back for one election. This is going to have a lasting effect. What Donald Trump is doing is going to have a lasting effect on how Latino voters view the Republican Party in general. And even though he might have been able to win them back in 2024, it is very evident and obvious that much of that support is now gone. And even in multiple data points we see, the Trump administration and Republicans nationwide just simply do not seem to be getting the message that groups of voters, not just Latino voters, but groups of voters across this country that once backed them in droves or shifted in droves in favor of Trump and the Republican Party in 2024 are no longer ideologically aligned in that direction. And that is devastating for the Republican Party. And so as we navigate, many of these elections to cover, not just in Arizona, but across the country, we are going to find ourselves, too, at that crossroads and understanding why exactly elections have gone in the direction that they have. And Arizona will be one of those great autopsies for Republicans to look at, and Democrats, too. Going into the next presidential cycle, what is done right? What is done wrong? And what does it mean for the future of this nation and the future of electoral politics in the 2 years following these midterms? Because the signs here are grim for the GOP. And arguably, based off the results we saw last Tuesday, they should be. And as we go, again, continue to navigate this very, very interesting day and age of electoral politics where a lot is changing seemingly overnight, and groups that were considerably in favor of Republican politics before no longer are. And that is the real damage that the President of the United States is doing to his own political party. And as we see Republicans continue to do this reflection point about how did they get here, that they spent decades trying to build out a diverse winning coalition on the national stage, and they finally did it a year ago, only for it to collapse just a year later. A year later. They will come back to these points and see at moments like these and data points like these a year out, where they saw it clear as day and slow walked into what is likely going to be a Democratic wave in 2026. And it is the data like this that helps us understand it way in advance, because it's largely in line with the swing we've already seen on the national level, and it's something we might be able to expect in 2026 and potentially beyond. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video for you to watch, and then a playlist for my 2026 House election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all tomorrow.